I spoke to this point before in greater depth on my previous video showcasing Ad Infinitum. That was for the track Marching on Versailles, one of the initial debut singles off of Chapter 1 Monarchy, which is their first debut album. I took a bit of a gamble in how I approached covering Ad Infinitum. I thought there was enough of an entryway paid for what would be a successful and satisfactory delivery through my earlier experience listening to Melissa Bonney, or the front lady of Ad Infinitum, if you're not familiar, her collaboration of Mortemia, who's not familiar with that name as well, and he's made several appearances on this channel for what I've covered in the music world, a one-man Norwegian gothic symphonic metal artist, heralding from the band Sirenia, but Mortemia is his own project. I was captivated on that collaborative effort he produced with Melissa Bonney through Devastation Bound. It is, as far as I'm concerned, my favorite track thus far on the Pandemic Pandemonium sessions of what I've covered. That is his release. And Devastation Bound had such a dynamic sound to it, which of course brought me in. It's a very original tune if you've not heard it. The symphonic edge played up with the operatic background vocals is genius, and the piano interludes, seamless. But Melissa Bonney's voice really took me aback. It was quite captivating. And I took a bit of a gamble, as I said, in how I normally approach music coverage. I don't tend to buy music albums in full release outright unless I have a long-standing regard for the artist and I've already listened to a lot of their works and I consider them a top-tier talent, or if I've listened to maybe a couple tracks and I have a good impression. I bought Ad Infinitum in advance of even covering them for the first time. I've bought all their projects, except for the remastered album of the first chapter. I haven't bought that one yet, but I bought chapters 1, 2, and I bought the 2 tracks available thus far for number 3, even though it's still in the pre-order status. And I'm probably going to end up pre-ordering it because it's so good, at least from the sounds of what I've heard thus far from Ad Infinitum. Having covered Marching on Versailles, I am quite impressed. This is the type of music that I love as a metalhead, and as somebody even more specific to that who's a big fan of symphonic metal and of European metal. I've spoken extensively on this channel, and I'm sure many of you who follow my music coverage know this. I've taken a principal focus on the entertainment world and the music space within specifically European countries. I've been very impressed, though I have a high regard for many American artists as well, and many artists I haven't showcased yet are coming. I've definitely had a soft spot, though, for European talent. The elevation of craft I find in that realm of the world, specifically within the metal scene, is, and I made this comparison as well in the previous video, equitable to perhaps make a comparison here to the reverence that people have for, let's say if you're a big fan of like pop music. I'm not, but there's a lot of Americans who perhaps follow more well-known Hollywood established songs that love K-pop. And maybe there's some people like me that have listened to maybe a spattering of K-pop songs too, but I've liked, but the reverence I've seen thrown at bands in that realm of the South Korean entertainment industry, which is also thriving, much in the same way the European music industry is, or specifically I'd say actually the European scene more broadly, but specifically the metal scene, South Korea is thriving as well in their arts industry in many different ventures, even in their music world, though. They've got quite a captivation among Americans. That's the same level of reverence that I have, even though I do look at selection, maybe sort of limited one. I haven't listened to every K-pop song in the world, but I've heard a couple that are pretty good. That's the same reverence I have for European talent. And I've loved on this channel having the opportunity to use my platform as a means to explore new artists, and perhaps to provide a doorway for others who are looking to have that same exploration that I'm yearning for. And in many ways, I've satisfied through exploring into the European realm, outside of what I'm typically familiar with and what I was primarily, founded on in my life, which was American music. Europe has just blown me away with some of the artistic efforts that I've heard. Marching on Versailles is a beautiful initial debut to set a strong foundation for Ad Infinitum and a strong impression with me. That was a beautiful initial track to listen to. Right along the lines of what I love of metal, with symphonic energy, varied structure, complex structure even, beautiful vocal work, including some screams from Melissa Bonney. She can really sing. She's extremely talented. But my gamble in buying the albums outright, just based on faith, was certainly satisfied. It was a fitting purchase, obviously. Let's go ahead and listen to more. Because again, I said there's a selection coming, and I've wanted to, part with this channel, again, as I said for a long time, music for me has been the favorite art form among many others, even many of the ones I founded this channel on, and still continue to this day. And there's many different types of artistic expressions, that I like, and each expression itself is stylized individually, but for me it's music that's been the closest in relationship, and it's one that I've wanted to, in comparison to other artistic forms, bring in a more principal role into this channel. And I've wanted to do so, again, like I said, for years at this point, and now I'm finally starting to have that presence where my ambition is being satisfied. But I've taken a special place in venturing out into other realms and being more explorative, Europe being that. Even though, again, I had enough of a threshold set with me for a strong impression, given many of the long-lasting groups I've listened to that I've been familiar for many years. But I've loved this journey of exploring new artists. And as I said, with the introduction, Mortimia was the doorway for this, and I'm very grateful to his music and the collaborative model that he goes with for providing a doorway to many artists, some of which are coming eventually as well. Ad Infinitum will not be the last. I'm keeping many of his collaborations in account, as well as others that perhaps outside of Mortimia, but other collaborations and efforts that I'm familiar with. Let's go ahead and take a look at Ad Infinitum again with the second single. And I'm using the music videos as a means to look at the selection. I'm going to listen to the album in their entirety on my own, but I wanted to give a good helping of coverage to tracks on the release, because I want to also I want to provide content to communicate my level of reverence with the European music world, with those of you who perhaps are metal fans like me, or just wanting good music. You're not finding, or you're having trouble stumbling upon talents that are long-lasting for you. Or perhaps you just want the experience of seeing what's out there. I'm hoping to whatever extent that I can forge that path for you. And perhaps in the process, maybe meet some of you who are longtime fans, right? I've also said before, my music tastes do disconnect me a bit from people in my close vicinity. And I have, in the course of this channel, for many of the groups I've covered, met a bunch of new fans of music that I haven't stumbled upon, and at that point was taking a fresh impression with, that I've met longtime fans. And I've had certain relationships forged where there's a feeling of, hey, I'm not the only listener and metal fan out there, especially if one that likes to explore what's, the full range of artistic offerings, perhaps even in more seldom thought places, especially in America. And I say that again with all due respect. I judge it by my social circle. Nobody knows about 95% of the groups I name off. I hope to, at some level, not only meet some of you who are longtime fans of the types of music that I look for, but I hope to also provide grounds for forging new fans, if so deserved, to the band's efficacy. And I would say Ad Infinitum easily deserves that. Margin on Versailles, like I said, really hit the ground running for me. Let's give See You in Hell a try. A much more ominous name, could be quite powerful in terms of the execution of a track. We'll see. I mean, by that name alone, you've certainly given an impression. I'm going to go ahead and cue up the song / the video. And if you're not familiar with the way I approach my music coverage on this channel, I do try and provide every accommodation possible to suit viewer tastes. And so if you'd like to read along with the message of the piece and the lyrics as envisioned by the artist, I have those superimposed in the video, and I'll track along with the piece as we proceed forward. All right. See You in Hell. Let's commence. Oh, okay, softer.
All my fears and doubts, get my hand to choose the way to end this masquerade.
Oh, I like the good stepping pattern. She was like that steady incline in. It's a good entrance, very soft, elegant. Oh, wow, I like this. Quite a switch. She's got a beautiful voice. flows beautifully with the instrument use. We're back to the stepstone pattern, the little, the twinkles of the music. So subtle.
Give my trust and heart to a troubled man. Never satisfied, my love, you threw it away now. Your soul in the clouds. I look at the sky. Can you see me smile? I don't regret it anyway.
Beautiful presence to INFINITUM's work. Really. Again, quite a range of coverage.
So will it be for eternity?
Bit of an interlude, okay. Good vocal construction here. And to fit with the elegance of the track, you have a very elegant video to boot as well, and definitely has that European drive. That was a really good section, by the way. Bit of a guitar solo. Again, a very good construction, but based on, again, only 2 listens, I can definitely see the freshness of this groove. And there really is a fresh presence. Really good presence to the work and quite an ominous release. How would you like to be the male recipient? Like, everybody's dead. Except everybody else there, I guess, is part of the party. You know, sometimes I like to, and it's hard to do this in a fresh take. You know, when you look at a song initially and you read the lyrics for the first time and you see the vision of the artist, sometimes it's easier to follow. It depends on the content, the video, and the message of focus and how it's articulated. Some videos go for more of a metaphorical, poetic vision, and at some level, maybe the message is a bit more abstract to siphon or synthesize. So on an initial take, when you're giving a first impression, it's kind of hard. I've kind of stumbled along in the path of this in the past, where there's some songs where perhaps the artists have divulged the impression and the theme that they want to convey behind the piece, and so I can go into the video knowing that, and then read the lyrics in examination and see that integration, or maybe see that play out in the song or the video itself. In other cases, perhaps you get a fresh look and you're like, you know, I'm trying to best understand the artist mindset. I really like to engage with the heart of the artist, but it may be hard because, again, it might be initial, so some songs and pieces of art take a little more time to investigate. That's kind of what I sense here, even though I may be tempted to say that this piece, I mean, I'd say she's definitely combating with, or maybe she's sort of like going for like the lady of power image, right? I think it fit in like the monarchy theme, like, you know, I'm setting the rule here, and so, you know, with the poison, I keep my subjects in line. I don't know. I mean, if you're a cinema fan, she could be playing like a Sherlock Holmes type, like Lord Blackwood role. I don't know. Or you could perhaps say, I mean, I kind of got a vibe of this too, the way she was singing this in the lyrics. Like, goodbye. I mean, it's quite an ominous statement too. Goodbye, my love. May we meet again. Heaven is closed. See you in hell. Like, how would you like to be the recipient of that? I mean, you know, I look at this from the perspective of, you know, I'm a Christian, so I'm kind of like, it's a very ominous message. I'm not sure anybody would want to be the recipient, ideally, of somebody's wrath like that. But the way Melissa Boney sings in the video is quite beautiful. Very elegant voice. Again, like I said, as well, the varied range of Ad Infinitum in regards to their tune structures really impresses me. This is very different from the first initial Marching on Versailles, even though it has that metal foundation. It's much softer. Ominous Presence. Well, Marching on Versailles did too, but this is really beautiful. It really feels like more of a ballad number with that rougher edge to it that I'm very engrossed by. But like when I read it, like I gave my trust and heart to a troubled man, going back to the message here, never satisfied my love, you threw it away. Now your soul in the clouds, look at the sky, can you see me smile? I don't regret in any way. But there's this last glass of wine, then your heart was mine, so it will be for eternity. I mean, it just, I know, it does sound kind of like a vengeful performance, but I mean, it's good, though. So again, from maybe the interpretation, maybe there isn't necessarily a deeper... maybe there is. Maybe this song is going for more of a story vibe, and it's not necessarily we're trying to communicate a message. It varies among different groups. Some groups want to communicate a certain theme, whereas others perhaps are more focused on telling a narrative. I kind of sense that energy as well with Ad Infinitum, with the way that their albums are structured, like with chapter 1, then chapter 2, presently now what we have is coming chapter 3, so maybe there is a general storyline here to fit more into a darker gothic vision, along with symphonic metal lines, but I've been very impressed with what I've heard from Ad Infinitum thus far. So maybe the interpretation, again, will take a bit more time to meditate on to best understand the impression the artists were going for, even though I could see perhaps a couple through lines. And perhaps again, music is subjective in its interpretation. Sometimes messages speak to people in unique ways, right? That are not necessarily as present in mainstream appearances. Some listeners might experience a different sensation than others might. Music is very unique in that artistic style, and in part that's why I admire it so much, but it is such a unique vision from listener to listener, including myself. I've sometimes found messages where, the artist has stressed one thing, and maybe I have to retool it a bit, keep it in essence, the meaning and the way it was written, right, with the lyrical structure and the convention and the tune, of course, keeping all that in focus, but maybe giving the interpretation a bit of metamorphosis, if allowed, right, to best personalize it, if that is available, right? Music is very unique in how it can be approached. And I do think, even though, again, like I said, maybe with some music it's harder to evaluate on a first initial take, perhaps like this, where you need more time to mull over the message of the piece and best understand the mindset of the artist, unless you have that provision offered to you. I mean, it's a fun process in itself. I could say, though, on initial release, what I can best judge now, rather than, on later deliberation, I'm very engrossed by Ad Infinitum. Again, quite a range to their work, in my opinion. And this is why I love European music. It really does speak to so many talents that I sometimes hear in America. Though I would say Europe is quickly positioning itself as a rival to a lot of the mainstream artists that perhaps are more well-known and established here. I think Europe's got some real bangers that perhaps, if given a better point of attraction and more of a familiarity base, in part, like I said, I hope that this channel in some part fashions that for others. God willing, that happens. This is why I ventured into the space. Again, the talent that I see under the European market label for the metal scene, I've just been captivated by. And I love exploring new artists that have that potential to their work that I look for. Ad Infinitum is one, and I hope you've experienced the same impression if you are coming to this as a first listener, or maybe you're a longtime fan. I'd love to hear what angle you come from down below. And did you enjoy See You in Hell? Such an ominous name. And though, like I said, you might not want to be the recipient, it's quite an enjoyable listen. I mean, it's kind of, again, like an oddity, right? You have such a tragic song and intention, but then it's a piece you want to keep coming back to. So you're like, well, actually, See You in Hell is kind of a good thing if you think about it in that context. I quite like it, though. It's an exquisite piece of art, in my opinion, and I can't wait to hear more from Ad Infinitum. Again, like I said, I hope that there are some of you out there that are experiencing this on a first impression. I knew going in, with Melissa Boney's talents, given the Mortimer introduction, that she'd be great, and Marching on Versailles certainly spoke, to her credits. And this is an ever exquisite follow-up. More to come, but I'm very happy with Ad Infinitum presently. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.